Hi, my name is Adam. Last Friday, I had a special plan. I was going to take my uncle to the airport. His flight was at 11:30 in the morning, so we needed to leave the house early. I woke up at 6:30, took a shower, and got ready. I wore a clean shirt and jeans. Then I packed some snacks and water in the car. At 7:15, I went to my uncle's house. He opened the door and smiled. "Are you ready?" I asked. He held his suitcase and said, "Yes, let's go." He also carried a small bag with his passport, phone, and charger. We put everything in the car. He checked again to be sure he had his passport. "Very important," he said. The road was busy, but I drove carefully. I tried to avoid traffic. My uncle told me stories from his last travel to Istanbul. He said the airport there was very big. We listened to soft music and talked about his plans. The luggage in the back seat moved a little. So I stopped the car and fixed it. We passed by 2 gas stations and 1 car park. I checked the time. It was 8:40. Still okay, but we needed to drive faster. My uncle looked outside the window and smiled. "Thank you for helping me today," he said. "No problem, Uncle," I replied. "I'm happy to take you to the airport." At the airport entrance. We arrived at the airport at 9:20. The big building was full of people. Cars were coming and going. Many travelers stood outside with suitcases and bags. I stopped the car near the entrance. A security guard came to the window. He smiled and said, "Drop off only?" I said, "Yes, my uncle is traveling." He nodded and let us stop for a few minutes. My uncle opened the door and got out. I helped him take his luggage from the back. He looked around and said, "Where is the trolley? I need one." I ran to the side and found a trolley. It was a little rusty, but it worked fine. We put the suitcase and small bag on it. Then I pushed it toward the check-in area. Before we went inside, my uncle checked his passport again. He also looked at his ticket on the phone. He said, "My flight is still on time." I smiled and said, "Good, you're lucky." The sun was hot. We stood in the shade for a few minutes. Then I gave him a cold bottle of water. He drank it and said, "I forgot how hot Saudi summers are." I laughed and said, "Yes, especially at the airport, no trees." We walked together to the big gate. There were people holding passports, phones, and papers. Some looked excited. Some looked tired. One child was crying next to a woman with 4 big bags. I told my uncle, "This is your door. From here, you go to security." He said, "Thank you. You helped me a lot today." We hugged. He pushed the trolley and walked inside. I stood and watched him go. The big doors closed behind him. Now it was time for me to go home. Security check and waiting area. My uncle walked through the big glass doors. Inside, he followed the signs to the security area. A man in a uniform waved him over. "Please put your bag and laptop on the tray," he said. My uncle smiled and followed the instructions. He took out his laptop from the bag, removed his watch, and put everything into the tray. Then he walked through the metal detector. Beep! The guard said, "Please step back." My uncle laughed nervously. He checked his pockets and found some coins. He put the coins in the tray and tried again. This time, no beep. "Okay, you're good," the guard said. He collected his belongings and went to the next area, the waiting area. There were many chairs and screens showing flight times. He found his flight number, JED to CAI, on time. He sat down and looked around. There were families, students, and tourists. Some people were talking. Some were using phones. Others were just quiet. He looked at the boarding pass again. Still 1 hour left. Suddenly, a man next to him sneezed. "Bless you," my uncle said. "Thank you," the man replied. They started talking. The man was also flying to Cairo. They shared stories about family, about food, and about the last time they traveled. The man said, "I always feel nervous before a flight." My uncle said, "Me too. But once we sit on the plane, we relax." A loud sound came from the speakers. "Attention, please. Flight JED to Kai is now boarding at Gate 14. My uncle stood up quickly. "Time to go," he told the man. They wished each other a good trip. He checked his passport one more time, picked up his bag, and walked to the gate. Boarding the plane and finding a seat. My uncle walked to Gate 14. There were many people in line. He waited patiently. The airline staff checked each person's boarding pass and passport. Next, he gave the woman his documents. She smiled and said, "Thank you. Enjoy your flight." He followed the signs to the airplane door. A friendly flight attendant stood at the entrance. "Welcome on board," she said. "Seat number?" 22A, he replied. She pointed. "Go straight, then left." He walked down the narrow aisle, passing people putting bags in the overhead bins. Some children were already sitting, playing with small toys or looking out the window. He reached row 22. A young man was sitting in 22B, the middle seat. My uncle smiled and said, "Excuse me, I'm in 22A, by the window." The man stood up. "Sure, no problem." My uncle sat down and looked outside. The airport lights were bright and other planes were moving. Soon, the pilot spoke over the speakers. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard flight JED to CAI. We will depart shortly. Please fasten your seatbelt." A flight attendant walked by, checking that everyone had their seatbelts on. She helped a man who didn't know how to use it. The plane started to move. My uncle looked nervous. The young man next to him said, "Don't worry, it's always a little scary at first." The plane turned onto the runway. The engines became louder. Then it took off into the sky. My uncle held his seat. After a minute, he smiled. The lights of Jeddah were shining below. He whispered, "Here we go." The plane flew smoothly in the night sky. My uncle looked out the window. He saw the stars and the dark land below. The seatbelt sign turned off. People stood up to stretch. A flight attendant came with a cart. She smiled and said, "Would you like something to drink?" My uncle answered, "Yes, please. Can I have orange juice?" She gave him a cup and a small snack. He said, "Thank you." The flight attendant nodded and moved on. He drank the juice slowly, thinking about his trip. He would see his sister and her family. He missed them a lot. He hoped the gifts in his suitcase were okay. Later, he went to the bathroom. He followed the signs to the back of the plane. There was a line, but not too long. When he finished, he returned to his seat. He took out his phone and opened a game. But the Wi-Fi was not working, so he put it away and closed his eyes. He rested for a while. Suddenly, the pilot spoke again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now starting our descent into Cairo. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." The flight attendants walked around, checking bags, windows, and seats. The plane moved slowly down through the clouds. The lights of Cairo appeared. The plane landed with a small bump. Everyone clapped. It was a safe landing. My uncle waited for the plane to stop. He stood up, took his small bag, and followed the people out of the plane. Inside the airport, he walked to passport control. The officer checked his documents and said, "Welcome to Cairo." Then he went to collect his luggage. The baggage claim area was full of people. He looked at the screen for his flight number. Finally, he saw his suitcase. He picked it up and smiled. Then he walked outside. His niece was waiting near the door. "Uncle," she shouted. They hugged. He said, "It feels good to be here."